Wow, all right, everybody. Getting live today has been quite a chore, so I am completely discombobulated. I'm going to turn it over to my dear friend Kyle over there on my right hand side, and he's going to kick us off today while I get my brains together.
Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Digitized Live with myself, Kyle Homans, and your co-host, Kent Langley. We are very, very excited to be back here for another episode of Digitized Live. And yes, we have had quite the morning. It would appear that as more and more human beings are getting online and getting themselves digitized, that we are experiencing some interesting turbulence and bandwidth issues and all those kinds of things. So we thought that today's show is all about that, the do's and don'ts of going digital, as well as how do we, for everybody looking at this and for ourselves, how do we start to set a new standard of digital consistency? The same way that we would go into the workplace, the same way that we would go into anywhere else in home, there are certain types of etiquettes, there are certain types of systems that we follow because they really work to bring human beings together, to have the most explosive, progressive, forward-moving conversations. There's a way that cultures thrive, there's a way that businesses are built all around physical in-person activity. Now, what's interesting as we are forced into lockdown, as we are working so much more in the digital realm, which is perfect for this show because this is about unlocking your digital potential, there's actually something interesting. There's so many different platforms out there now. There's so many different ways that we can get online and start to communicate. That is creating, in our experience over the last couple of weeks of running our businesses and converting a lot of live and in-person experiences to digital experiences, that is creating quite a bit of chaos. It's chaos. It's disrupting timing sequences because of, can we connect correctly? Can we get online? Are we using the right links? Do we have the right setups? Do we have the right audio and visual? And can we share documentation and all those kinds of things? I think what we're going to be entering into is how do we start to create a new consistency and a new standard of digital experiences together. So we thought that we would kick off and really dive into some real-time tools and tricks as we're navigating them right now. Kent, what do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, the way you framed this earlier as we were trying to prepare for the show was digital do's and don'ts, and
Mm-hmm.
I really like that as well. And you know, as we were preparing for today's show, Kyle, as you well know, I was sweating because nothing was working, absolutely nothing. And one of the things that I'm going to say as a digital do is we have to be patient because it's not just you and me that are trying to now produce and deliver Digitized Live. It is literally the entirety of humanity that is attempting to go online many times for the first time ever. And I can tell you that the complexities of even just taking a show live with the two of us
Right.
are dramatically higher than me just doing a very, dialed in, produced, beautiful entry into a Zoom call or something like that. It's just not the same beast. You were telling me earlier, and I'll toss this back to you. You were talking about some of your experiences
Yeah.
on Zoom calls lately, and I've often had some interesting ones as well. And if anybody wants to go out and Google "guy takes Zoom call bathroom," you're going to find a really funny story about a gentleman who quite recently didn't realize he was live broadcasting as he took his phone with the camera on to the restroom and proceeded to do his business on his conference call. So, these are the kind of things we don't want to happen. So that's clearly in the don't. So you think about etiquette, right? You think about tips and tricks and things that will keep you from making a potentially embarrassing or career-ending mistake. So Kyle, you had mentioned to me earlier that you've had some interesting experiences on Zoom calls. Maybe you can turn those into some do's and don'ts for us.
Absolutely. Just building on what you were saying, there was another meme going around where there was an executive woman who actually went through the same thing. I really feel for her, but
Yeah,
where you see that interface of all of the different boxes open and somebody giving a presentation and same thing. She must have just assumed that the video was off. Well, digital do's and don'ts. So what's interesting, let's just jump into what happened for myself over the last couple of days, and we've had the privilege of actually converting a lot of live experiences into digital ones over the last few weeks. And this week was very interesting, where we have global audiences coming together into one shared platform, and we are running effective sessions for the whole day, literally from a 9 to 5 type of experience with breaks. So there's been a lot of really strong and powerful learnings inside of this. But my biggest thing in terms of digital do's and don'ts is there's this piece about your digital agenda. And this is just, this is something that I'll probably also even end today with, which is my one big takeaway, is this idea of the digital agenda. When we have a digital agenda, what often happens is on email, suddenly a link will come through. It'll like, hey, we're going to jump on this thing, and we click into it and suddenly we're in. And when you're in, people's cameras angles are a little strange. The audio is a little off. The backgrounds are a little washy. Like there's sometimes lag time in audio or in video. There are strange sounds. But one of my favorite digital do's and don'ts was from a meeting this morning and a meeting yesterday, where people decide, because they're home, they decide to turn the video off so they can't be seen what they're doing, but they forget to turn the audio off at the same time. And the amount of times that we've had to pause a meeting to say, would you mind just muting yourself, because you can hear the coffee grinder, we can hear you cooking your eggs, we can hear you, we can hear you doing something else, we can hear you blah, blah, blah. Whatever those things were, that video and audio, two completely separate things. And so I think that's an absolute digital do and don't, which is that if you are entering into a meeting the same way you would walk into a live meeting or an in-person meeting, there's some things, there's those types of etiquettes that should really match in those environments. And just because we have the audio off and the video off switch, we have to double check that those are actually off or those are actually on. So,
yeah, that's a big one. You just said something I'll grab. Think about the way if you get in your car and you drive to work and you walk in your meeting, you're not walking in your meeting with a frying pan and your phone kind of like, I hope you're not anyway, like this. Maybe if you're doing a cooking show, okay, but fine. The reality is that you need to. This is a professional situation. You are sending your brand out to the world, and you need to mind what that is. You need to care what that is. You probably look, if I don't get a chance, it's an early meeting, I haven't had the shower, I keep a hat next to the desk that's not too offensive, and I'll put that on, right? So if you see me on here on a Digitized live show and I'm wearing a hat, it's because I have a little kit just off to the left that covers me if I'm in a hurry or whatever. A few minutes ago, one of my kids walked in on a conference call, and I've just sort of had to accept the fact that my children are going to join my calls, and most people have been okay with that. So that's really important, Kyle. One of the other things is about actually I'll shift just a little bit to talk about this thing. Is this concept of confusing the tool with the production. Okay, so don't do that, right? This is a digital don't. Don't confuse the tool with the production. So you have a camera. It's going to project you into something. It could be a Google Hangout. It could be a Zoom call. It could be a live event on one of these newer platforms that are coming online for doing live events, and there are several. The thing is that there are things about your production that are common, and they're yours, and they're your side. So right now, for example, just to use this show as a live example, you see Kyle. He's actually virtually off to my right. Physically, he is far away from me, probably 9 or 10 miles, I guess. We're in the same town, but we're both taking the care to have our green screens, in our case, behind us. I'll show you guys. Can I do this? No, I can't do this easily without potentially breaking things. Not going to do it. But behind me, it's just green. It's a green on the wall. Behind Kyle, it's just green. The backdrop behind us, this mesh that you see moving around, is an MP4 file that I have composited into the video feed. I'm not going to get into all the how of the way this works. It can be complicated. The logo is in a different space. So let me just do something real quick. I will literally turn off the mesh and the logo, and I'll take us live just on a black background. So Kyle, now I'm not showing you the monitor feed, so you can't see that right now. But you and I are just on a plain, nondescript black background. For some reason, I look extremely pale today. I promise everybody I'm okay. The lights are weird. I have all these really
Vitamin D
beautiful lights.
drops, Kent.
Yeah,
Vitamin D drops.
I just turned up my lights. I have actually I use something called a stream deck on my desk that has my lights. I can turn them up and down. I'm gonna go with a warmer color, a little more brightness off to my right. Do I look any better? I don't know. But anyways, let's turn back on the background and feed that back in. When this show starts, you'll notice that we have an interstitial. I can pop that back on right now. And now you still hear me. Kyle and I are still back there live behind the interstitial, but I'll turn that off now and I'll take us back live. What I'm telling you is all of the stuff that you're seeing on YouTube in your web browser, your tool of choice right now to watch this show, is not YouTube. YouTube is just the delivery mechanism. It is a tool that brings this content to you. And you should not confuse the tool with the production or the content. And I'm experiencing this on a daily basis. Another quick one. I was just in a Zoom call earlier with some folks who are exploring running a live event. And they said to me, well, Kent, this thing that you just showed me, it was a clip of me speaking live at an event. If we were really lucky, Kyle, maybe I could, while you're talking, maybe I could actually be super brave and bring that up and put it here kind of in the middle of us. I'll try it. I'll do it while you're talking. I'll try not to break anything. But the point is, the guy says to me, he goes, and hey, if you're out there watching, you know who you are, because you said you were going to watch today. He says to me, well, what's different? Why is this any different or better than a Zoom call? And I said, well, is Internet Chrome better than Firefox? Is it, it's not that you're seeing it in Zoom. I said, we could drop here and I could load you up. Remember the experiment we did the other day, Kyle, where I walked you through the hopping through all the different platforms in real time? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that while I see if I can actually queue up a video. This will be an interesting experiment for us to run.
Yeah, so what Kent is sharing is that what's interesting in the digital world is that we're able to, when you have a strong interface on the back end. Now, for those of you, some of you that are listening, just the idea of what is Zoom, because we've experienced that for the first time in the last couple of weeks, that people are actually understanding Skype and Zoom for the very, very first time, which may sound strange to some, because that's the same as the first time somebody gets on an airplane and they say, here's how you buckle and unbuckle a seatbelt. You go, like, I've done this 1,000 times. But for some people, over the last couple of weeks, this is their first time. But now as one starts to experience more, and you're in the world that Kent and I are in, which is also helping companies produce really powerful digital experiences, like the one that Kent is demonstrating in the background, and will be demonstrating in the background. One of the things that we're able to do is that once you are in a particular interface, you can start to interchange where you take people. It's much the same way that if you are in your web browser or even in your desktop working on your laptop, you open up different programs and you can, show different types of Word documents, graphic documents, all those kinds of things. But you're moving between different applications or different interfaces. You're able to actually take people on that journey and move people between completely different online interfaces without them even realizing that they're being moved around. This is all that's all happening in the background, which is a strong production capability. But as one starts to get to understand these mechanisms, which we're all going to start inheriting that kind of language and those linguistics and those skills, the more that we're living into the digital age, because these things are important. We have to be able to have seamless transitions. We have to be able to move from one interface to another interface without losing audience, without having people disengage or disconnect or put another browser over the top. There's a really great technique in Zoom, by the way, for those of you that are watching. There's a setting for those that have got some of the subscriptions in Zoom, that you're actually able to toggle something on that says that when you're running a meeting, it will show you as the host of the meeting who actually has Zoom as their main browser if they're actually watching, or
Oh
if they
yeah,
have
the
another
attention.
thing in the attention, if they have another thing in front of them, which means that you see their camera on and their audio is on and they maybe not in their head, but they're doing something completely different. Because in, in any
Hi
other type of
everybody,
typical
this is
meeting, we
Kent
wouldn't
Langley
really
with
necessarily be, as
Digitized
Ken speaking, I'm
Live.
going to now
I'm
pick up my
recording a
book and
special.
start reading or drift off into somewhere else. Yes, we do have that with mobile phones. That's a very hard one to navigate, but it's a bigger one now. So in order to hold people's attention in this space is becoming more and more difficult. In order to be able to keep people engaged is another one that is can be very, very difficult. So what Kent has been demonstrating and going to be demonstrating is that we can move and move around and try different things in the background. There, I see something happening. Is moving and showing different things in the background where you can produce very interesting experiences and take people on a journey while you still actually are interacting in this space. But that is, that's a bit more of an advanced technique, and it's also something where it shows you what is possible in this space. But it also requires us, going back to some of our things, our do's and our don'ts, and our consistency piece is an absolute don't, and is to start experimenting in real time when you have a very short amount of attention with a group of people. You want to be able to do that. The do is to do some of that pre-planning up front. What I was saying, like the digital agenda, is you want to be able to anticipate and come in with some things so that you can deliver a really powerful and strong experience, like what Kent is able to do on our production over here. It's because he's thought this out. We sat for 45 minutes before this call, before this video, really talking about what you can and can't do, and what we should and shouldn't do,
Yep.
and testing those things out so that it is super seamless. Anything else
Well,
to add there, Kent?
I queued up an example. So I'm going to pipe what's about to happen, and again, I'm not going to feed you the monitor, but behind us right now, the mesh will disappear, the screen will go black, and a video will cue as I transition it live. So this video is something that I recorded last week, I think it was, and it's called 7 Tips for Speaking at Digital Events. So I'm not going to make you watch the whole video. I'm just demonstrating a capability, and I'm not piping audio for this video for this demo. So don't be surprised if you don't hear any audio. It's just, that's not the point. So I've just done that. I've transitioned. So now I'm pointing
Hi
up
everybody.
like
This
the
is
good
Kent
weather
Langley
person
with
that I am
Digitized Live.
to myself
I'm
at
recording a
Digitized
special
Live,
episode for you
talking about
what
speaking
it
tips.
takes for a speaker
And you'll
to
notice
present
that in this
live.
case,
I've been doing this for a little
funny,
while now.
apparently I
and
have an
I
affectation
thought,
where I
well,
do this with my
rather than
hands
write
because I
them
just
down,
did it
why don't
while I
I
did
do
it
this
on the
recording?
recording,
Without
which is
further ado, we're going to go
super
over
weird.
7 tips today.
But there you go, 7
7.
tips. So
7
pretty
tips.
neat. And now
These are
I'm just going to
things
say
you're
we're done
going
with the
to want to
video.
think
I
about.
will
Maybe
click
go
a
through
couple
the
of buttons on this
checklists
side,
before
and the
you-
video's gone. And Kyle, we're back the way we were, presenting side by side with the Digitized Live logo over our official mesh background that we like so much. And I mean, I these types of capabilities fundamentally change the experience that your viewer has of, again, it does not matter. If you have a Zoom call with me, I can do all this crazy stuff where you'll be like, oh my gosh, I feel so much more engaged if I'm giving you a presentation. I don't use the standard Zoom slide capability. I do it in a fundamentally different way that uses all the same tech that we use to produce and broadcast this show. One of the things we may do, I'm not doing any multi-streaming right now, Kyle, but as you know, I've been doing a lot of experiments with Twitch. So it could be in one of these upcoming episodes, we will live stream as we're doing at the moment to YouTube, which is our primary show source. But maybe I'll just, I'll multi-stream it. I'll send it over to Twitch at the same time. I can do that, right? I could also send it to Twitter. I could also send it to Vimeo. I could also send it to a number of different places. I could also send it to my hard disk and record it. We don't do that. It takes CPU. Anyway, I'm getting into all the nerdy bits, I suppose. But my point is that, that I really want people to understand that the amount of capabilities that are available are huge. The production value definitely comes down to practice, as Kyle pointed out. And in order to really maintain a consistent, high quality of service, reasonable output. Today, for example, Kyle, another thing that we did was I downsampled the show. We usually broadcast at 1080p 30 frames per second. I'm only doing 720p 30 frames per second today because YouTube is experiencing massive growth. And so I'm trying to just be a good citizen and take a little less bandwidth as we do this today.
Yeah, so important, so critical. So for those of you that are also, very interested in the advanced pieces that, Kent has also been sharing in some of these digital productions, I'll take one step back from that and say that there's a couple of simple things for you to consider as you are spending more time online. And I know most of you are doing this really well, and some of these things we aren't even conscious about because it's not something that we've had to consciously be thinking about until these types of times that we find ourselves in. So one of the first things, and I'll backtrack just a few touch points on what we've been covering so far. One of them here is your video. So there is something very interesting, and I'm sure for all of you that have been on calls of late, you'll notice all these different angles. Like one of my favorite, and if I slip down here, is where you see the person on the Zoom call, but they're actually in this. You just see the top of the head, or you see, it's completely cut off, or they're coming down from this angle, or some are too close, or some are too far back. And you'll see the green screen in this one. But there's a piece here that imagine that you're sitting at a table. This is one of the do's to do.
And
Before you go into meeting it up, to figure out how you sit within the frame. Are you upright? Is your head forward? Are you looking at the camera? Because it's the same thing. If we want to engage and we want to bring our energy to any kind of meeting, especially in the digital world, we want to make eye contact, right? We have that little light that says we're online, a little camera point, so we understand where that point of possession is. But working with the frame, which is much like you're all going to become really budding videographers and photographers along the way. I'm sure you could get some breakout new profession from this. But there is something about working within your frame and then understanding that when you do a test, there's a test before you go on. Test your audio, test your video. Just have a look at what that looks like. And when it does come in, even if you adjust for a little minute, you're able to provide a non sort of super cluttered background. You're able to provide yourself really well in the frame so that you can engage with the audience. Because one of the things here that when you're in a good frame, that actually allows for a very productive and strong meeting. So that's the one is the video. And the second piece is the audio. One of the things that we've experienced a lot over the last couple of weeks is just the scratchiness or the dysfunction. People's audio is too high. People that are wearing headsets, their mic is amped up a little too high. It's too close to the mouth. If I'm going to speak with this one and I'll go here, the audio won't be, and it'll be pretty heavy, right? So there's a piece here about finding the right distance so that your sound quality and your visual quality match really well. I mean, those are super basics, but there we go. And there's
Am I a little too close to my microphone? Yeah.
So those kinds of things are all very carefully orchestrated. And for yourself, whether you're wearing headphones, whether you're wearing your AirPods, whether you have a Blue Yeti on the desk, exactly whether you have any of those kinds of things around you, those two features alone, just those two sources, working on your audio, getting the balance right, working on your video. And I highly recommend that you have the accountability and the consistency you're allowed to share with other people. Would you mind, hey, could you come a little closer? Could you angle your computer a little differently? Could you just work on your audio? Because when you get those tweaks done very early, like housekeeping at the beginning of a digital meeting, it allows for a much smoother meeting. Otherwise, someone's halfway in their flow and sorry, I can't see you very well, or your audio was off a little bit. Could you repeat that? Could you go back? Sorry, it's just, it's like being interrupted the whole time. So those are two do's. Check your video, really work within the frame. And the second one is check your audio so that you can really show up and be very consistent in the meeting that you are about to participate in or host.
Yep. For more of those tips, take a look at the 7 tips. It's on the YouTube channel. Just click there if you like it. If you like this content that we're providing, click subscribe. We really do need subscribers because it does help us get more attention over time and get the message out more. So if you want to help us do that, please subscribe. The last thing that we want to do today, Kyle, we're coming up on time, is we've committed to always trying to leave our audience with a sort of a final word. Go do this next if you want to try something. And I know at the beginning we were talking about this. So why don't you give our viewers one? You just gave a lot of tips and they were fantastic. But is there any one, and it could be another one of those, you can just repeat it. But is there any one thing that you think as soon as you click close and delete us from the rest of your day from this broadcast, what's that one thing somebody should go do in order to get their digital on a little bit more?
Yeah, my one thing for you, as you continue to unlock your digital potential, is start to set a precedent with yourself and model that behavior, role model that behavior, and with your teams to build a digital agenda. The same way that we send out, and we really should go into every meeting with an agenda. What's this meeting for? What are we trying to accomplish? What's the big outcome that we're shooting for? What is this meaning? Is it an information give? Are we making a decision? Are we doing some creative problem solving? Whatever it is, there's some context to that. I think that going into this, when you send out invitations to Zoom calls, webinars, meetings, group meetings, have an agenda, have your digital agenda. Hey, here's the criteria to really make this successful. Check your video, check your audio, make sure you're in a well-lit background. Please be mindful of your background noises if you are home, which we all are for a while. All those kinds of things. If you have your kids all running around you, please switch your audio off. I think it's really fine to be able to send a list of criteria, and it's going to probably take several times before it just becomes normal practice, like disciplined practice for some folk. Have your digital agenda. It's going to make such a world of difference and save you a lot of headaches and lost time dealing with technical issues in the meeting itself.
I'm going to put you on the hook here, Kyle, to produce a template, digitized digital agenda that we can share with people. I think we should absolutely do that. Needs to happen, needs to exist. I'll give a quick one. Mine is a little different. Over the weekend on Sunday, I took about 2.5 hours, and I literally just emptied my office workspace almost completely. I hope you noticed, Kyle, the audio is a little bit better. For me today, there's a little bit less echo and reverb. I've done some remodeling here to catch some of this. It's not perfect yet. I've ordered a little bit of acoustical foam to help me deal with the rest of the issues that are happening in this particular room. The tip, though, the thing that you should do when you leave here today is find a couple of hours when you can take a step back, right? Look at your workspace, tidy it up, build in a little bit of noise cancellation. In my case, I hung a blanket over a whiteboard and put it next to my desk, and it's made a big difference. I put a few pillows up in the corners, little hacks like that are mattering. So pay attention to that environment. Make it a space where you want to be, where you would be proud for people to see you broadcasting from, and give it a little love. All right, because I had to do that myself this weekend because things were just piling up and piling up and piling up, and everything from mail to empty boxes of things, and I'm just like, where did all this come from? So I really gave my environment a little bit of love over the weekend, and I can tell you the whole feeling, everything about it is just dramatically better, and it's made a huge difference to me this week to have done that and taken the time to just really tidy up my workspace and pay attention, as you pointed out, to the audio, because I was just kind of echoing all over the place. And I'm not there yet, and I'll share more about the little things that I do in this room to make it better and better over time. So that's my one takeaway for today.